Professor Dato Elizabeth Lee, Group CEO of Sunway Education and Director of ASCII Board of Directors. Mr. Daniel Rahman, CEO of Asian Strategy and Leadership Institute, also known as ASLI, and Vice President of Oxford Cambridge Society Malaysia. Mr. Ibrahim Mohammed, Ambassador of Aziz Foundation. Ladies and gentlemen, a very good evening and welcome to the Sunway Education Inclusive Leadership Series, also known as SEALS, with the topic of the influencer of a generation, from social media to real action. My name is Xiao Yu and I will be your MC for today. The Sunway Education Inclusive Leadership Series is jointly organized by the Sunway Education Group, Asian Strategy and Leadership Institute, ASLI, and Sunway University. Ladies and gentlemen, today's event will begin with a dialogue with our speaker, moderated by Professor Dato Elizabeth Lee, Group CEO of Sunway Education, followed by a Q&A session. Before we move to the next session, allow me to briefly introduce our speaker for today. Described as a barrier breaker, force for change, and influencer of a generation, Ibrahim Mohammed is a beacon of inspiration. A graduate of both Cambridge and Oxford universities, he is a multi-award winning education influencer, ambassador of the Aziz Foundation, trustee of Strive, and trainee solicitor at Farrer & Co. At Cambridge, Ibrahim received the Inclusive Education Award for his efforts to make the university more accessible, creating social media content that reached over 13.5 million people. As an Aziz Foundation scholar at Oxford, he launched a major online access event for British, Pakistani, and Bangladeshi students and researched the experiences for free school meal students. After graduation, he worked under billionaire Asim Aziz at the Aziz Foundation, creating scholarships and initiatives like Ramadan Lights and the first UN Day to combat Islamophobia. Now a trustee of Strive and a trainee solicitor at Farrer & Co., Ibrahim serves on the AI committee, continuing his relentless pursuit of inclusivity and excellence. With that, please join me in giving a warm welcome to Ibrahim Mohammed to take the stage together with Prof. Dato Elizabeth Lee. Dato, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Xiao Yu. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us this evening. I know it was raining outside, but it's great to have you all here. And of course, today we have a very special guest with us. This is in fact our third edition after the successful SEALS edition with our first speaker was Professor Dato Black, the president of St. John's College, Oxford. And then following Sue, we also have the president of Wolfson College, Cambridge, Professor Jane Clark. And today we're bringing someone who graduated from both the institutions. So we're being very fair. And in fact, Ibz and I are alumni from the same college in Cambridge, which is our beloved Wolfson College. And as mentioned by moderator Xiao Yu, Ibrahim Mohammed, also popularly known as Ibz Mo, is a multi-award winning influencer, a barrier breaker, defying all odds to be where he is today. And this evening, Ibz will be sharing with us on his journey from Hackney to Cambridge to Oxford and now to Malaysia, and how he uses his influence to advocate on the issue of education, media, and of course society. Now, to remind everyone, after our conversation, we are going to open up for a Q&A session with our speaker. Hence, you can prepare any questions that you would like to pose to Ibz later this evening. So, with that said, let's start. Ibz, you have shared before that you grew up with financial hardships, being raised by a single parent, and that you endured severe bullying. Yet, you have persevered and become a successful influencer, as people call you nowadays, with a collection of impressive awards. Now, would you mind sharing about your journey growing up?
Okay, wow. First of all, hello everyone, and thank you, Sunway, for inviting me. So, in terms of my journey, I'm a psychology graduate, and there's one thing we always say in psychology, which is to understand someone's journey and someone's upbringing, you have to understand their mother. So it all comes down to, I think, my mum. And I'll explain very quickly, but my mum was born and raised in Pakistan, and she was a child bride. So she was sold when she was 11 years old to a man in a neighboring village. And she's been a child bride. She was for about 5, 6 years, had a number of kids. 2 passed away, and then she sought help, and then she was able to go to the UK. My point in saying that is, we think, wow, it's all done now, she's saved. But of course, when she came to the UK, she brought a lot of trauma with her, as you can imagine. And so when she met my father, they had a number of kids, and I was the youngest. You could see that there was just so much unprocessed trauma and a lot of difficulties that carried with her across the border. And then when she met my dad being someone who wasn't really passionate about education, it wasn't like the best kind of mix that you would want if you are a child that is passionate about school. And so,
Wait. Time out. Go back, son.
Yeah.
Mom was sold as a child bride.
Yeah.
All right. And then she escaped Pakistan.
Yeah.
But she had a number of kids.
Yeah.
But you weren't one of them.
Yeah.
Okay. So from there, then she escaped without him, obviously.
Yeah.
All right. To the UK.
Yeah.
And met your dad.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Sorry, guys. Please continue.
So she met my dad, had a number of kids, but it's essentially a cycle, a vicious cycle of poverty, lack of education, lack of access to education, lack of engagement in the UK community. That essentially was just a household that wasn't dedicated to, education and kind of a functional upbringing. So that was my upbringing. And no one really said to me, go to school, do well in school, go to university. Instead, what happened was I watched a lot of American TV, a lot of American movies that always glamorize like college and university life. And so I just really loved the idea of going to like a campus. I think what subconsciously that meant was leaving home. And so I went to UCL, I went for an open day, and I just thought, beautiful campus, there's no way I'm going to get the grades. And then essentially what happened was I just went through a summer of working. I went in Primark. Do you guys have Primark in Malaysia?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know what Malaysia's equivalent would be. Uniqlo. No. So I basically just worked. I also went to the call center during summer. I saved up as much money as I could. I then moved out of my home, lived in a temporary flat during my A-levels, and just literally studied like non-stop. And it took one person, I always say it takes one person, one teacher specifically, to tell you, have you ever thought about applying to Cambridge? And it was that moment that completely changed my life, because I thought I would, why not apply to Cambridge? I've got good grades, I'm really hardworking, and then I applied, gotten in, and it literally kind of changed my life since then. And I think the moral of that story is there are many times, unfortunately, where you could be brought up in a household that isn't the best for you, with parents that don't really understand you, and sometimes the solution is to leave in that sense. I always maintain contact, but sometimes the best thing you can do is literally become your own provider and move away from this environment of toxicity for you to really flourish.
So when did you actually leave home?
17.
At 17?
Yeah.
And have you ever gone back?
Not to live, no. I'll go back to visit, I'll go back to eat for maybe a few days, but I'll never go back to like fully live there. One thing I loved about Cambridge is they could accommodate you during the holidays. So instead of having to go back during summer or during Christmas, I could stay on campus.
How did you manage with your finances?
Yeah, I did it. I did it. It's this, I always
think it costs money, you know, to go to Cambridge. It costs money to stay on campus. It costs money to live, really.
Yeah.
So how?
So I'm in a lot of debt, Elizabeth. So the UK government have a tuition loan system where regardless of your background, you could get a loan to cover your tuition fees. As a UK citizen, my tuition fees are about 9.5k, and the government will give you a loan, and then you pay it back after you graduate and you start earning money. So in that way, the UK is great for social mobility because it does try to cover the cost of tuition fees. And then apart from that, I just have always worked since I was like 16, working very odd jobs and just staying in as much as I can.
Okay, so is this normal for most people in the UK or for everyone? And how long will you be so-called in debt for with the government? What does that involve? Does that mean they can call on you and or what if you defaulted? I mean, you're here in Malaysia, you love it in Malaysia, you fall in love and you decide to settle down, you know, and stuff like that. Then how?
Yeah, so essentially, the UK government, what they will take is a small percentage of what you earn, about, let's just say, £22,000. So with my current jobs, I earn a certain amount, and so they would essentially just take £300 a month, and then you repay. The UK government also has a policy where if you can't pay your loan back for whatever reason after 40 years, they will scrap the loan completely. So it does come out of your paycheck, like similar to America as well. It'll come from your paycheck. In terms of is it normal? So yes and no. It's normal for people that have my upbringing to kind of, struggle and work as much as they can. It's not normal for the majority of students in Cambridge. And I think that was one thing that really got me invested into doing work about inclusivity is I remember my first lecture in Cambridge, studying psychology, walking in, thinking this is the best of the best, and just seeing like 95% white, middle-class people, a small, tiny staircase of people of colour. And so it's not common at all for the majority of UK citizens, but it is common for those who literally are brought up in the same environment to me.
But surely, even the ones who are white, are they all middle class?
Yeah. So statistically speaking, there is an increase in Cambridge and Oxford of white working class. But the way in which we measure it is really interesting. So we usually use the word state school and private school.
That's right.
But one thing that I researched during my dissertation, which was looking at state school students at Oxbridge, is the term state school isn't necessarily the best measurement for deprivation, because essentially what it is it's a school that parents just didn't want to pay for a private school, so they sent them to the best state school. We also have a hierarchy of state schools. You have grammar schools, technology schools, and then you have comprehensive schools, and then you have low comprehensive schools, and that was the school that I went to. So in terms of measuring someone's background and socioeconomic status in Oxford, it's really difficult, but there is a lot of change. There is this push to measure something called free school meals, that was what I did my master's dissertation on, which essentially means if you come from a certain background and your family earns very little, under about £16,000, then you are entitled to free school meals. So for me, it's the best measurement that we could use, but there is increasing awareness of trying to understand deprivation at Oxford.
Now, getting into Oxbridge, yes, one is grades, and an interview, for example. But aside from that, was there any positive, for lack of a better word, positive discrimination to actually bring in the so-called lower state school students?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. I think affirmative action, positive discrimination.
Yeah.
I don't think you can have that in Oxford because the absolute fundamental thing you have to have is the grades.
Right. Yes.
You have to get those grades, otherwise they will not look at you. And there are some universities that will offer contextual grades, so you don't need to get A's and A stars. You can get A's and B's if you come from a lower income background. But Oxbridge hasn't budged on that, and I don't think they will. So to answer your question, is there affirmative action? I think yes, there is. There is a lot of access schemes and programs to try and get young people to apply. But when it comes to that decision making, the first thing you have to have is, do you have the grades? And in order to even get those grades, you have to go to some of the best schools in the country. You have to have tutors. You have to be really engaged. You have to have a certain cultural capital that you wouldn't really get if you come from low income background in the UK.
Okay. Now, once you were A, how did you feel? I mean, did you feel like this was the place that you actually belong?
Yeah.
Or on the contrary? I mean, I would have thought it's on the contrary.
Yeah.
And how do you cope?
Yeah. So I actually feel like I did belong. Okay, because I knew that regardless of my background, where I come from, I have the grades. I am as academically capable as anyone else. I did actually love Cambridge, again for the sole reason because you're there for the academic side of things. You're working with the best professors, and I understood. I could engage in debate, I could engage in critique. So I actually really, really enjoyed it. However, I did feel a sense of duty to want to help people from my community.
Right.
And that kind of ties to the influence of work I did.
Yes.
Which essentially, when I was applying to Oxbridge, the first resource that I tried to find was a course in social media. And this was in 2016. There was literally nothing online. There would be the odd videos from the Cambridge University website, but nothing that was truly targeting kind of my community and speaking in my language. And that's why I started social media, because I wanted to document my time as someone who has my background at an institution like Oxbridge and just inspire one person to apply. And that was the goal, just one person. And then overnight, it became this massive platform. And the universities, both at Oxford and Cambridge, started to work with me in increasing the awareness. Because what we found was young people just needed to see someone like them there.
Yes.
And that was enough reason for them to apply. That was the sole reason, which was, if you're there, if you can do it, I can do it too. And so that's what led to this big wave and big change of accessibility at Oxbridge through social media.
Yeah, I think it's great because and to know that the university was so supportive of it, rather than being stuck up and sitting on its high horses, but they actually came out and worked with you to popularize and I suppose they saw a niche. Was it because the government had in any way mandated Oxford and Cambridge to be more inclusive? Or was it something that they arrived at themselves?
I think
How did it happen?
So I think it's something that Oxford arrived at in itself. And maybe I'm a bit biased in saying this, but I actually think that when Oxford does something, a lot of other universities will tend to follow. And there's pros and cons to that. But Oxford, especially Cambridge, they had this communications department, and they really wanted to push the boundaries. It was an award-winning communications team. And so they saw my video online, and they had a meeting with me and said, let's work together. But then what also happened was, when you're interviewing candidates and you ask them, why did you apply? And one of their reasons is, because I saw Ibz on social media, they kind of have to work with me then, because I've got a lot of gravitas in that regard. So it was kind of, they wanted to boost their social media approach, but also from a bottom-up perspective, they're seeing kids apply for just because of social media. And now, if you go on Cambridge's page, you'll see so much student vlogs and student stories. And it's great because they always say the blueprint was the work that we did together.
Now, we've been talking about influencer, and we all kind of have some kind of idea what an influencer is. But we also know that influencer can have many different connotations. So, what are some impressions people have when you hear about the word influencer? And on the other hand, how would you define a true influencer?
Yeah. So I think it was during my sociology A level that I heard of the word moral entrepreneur. It was coined by Howard Becker in the 70s. And it essentially just means someone who is able or wants to influence norms and behaviors for an individual or a group. And I always found that word like quite glamorous, like moral entrepreneur.
I know.
Not entrepreneur in money.
Entrepreneur. That's a new word, okay.
And what is a new word, but we came in the 60s, and I would say that is exactly what an influencer does. It's someone who's dedicated to trying to influence a norm or a behavior, but just through the medium of social media and content creation. So that's what I did. I created content to inspire and influence my influence, whereas other influencers can use it in a different way. But I would say that social media definitely has its pros and cons. The pros, I think, is the reach. You will never have anything that can reach, a certain amount of people without social media. The con, however, is sometimes the quality. And you'll see quite, you can see fake news, you can see hyperbole in social media, you can have clickbaiting, and I think this is where it comes.
What about the trolls?
You can have trolls, but I think the way I look at trolls is, if you've been bullied your whole life, online bullying is nothing. Like, it's just somebody typing the screen, and it's literally nothing, right? Like, there's a barrier, like this.
I like that attitude.
Yeah, I think that's...
Nothing, right?
Yeah. I think, what's it called, people, being horrible to you in your face. Literally online, it is absolutely nothing at all. And there are some tools that social media does adopt to try and minimize that. For example, you can filter words out, you can block people, and...
So anything swear words and
Yeah,
stuff.
I mean, the fact that you can literally just swipe delete, fine. I think that's enough. And I think there's a lot of power in being an influencer, because you are also in control.
So you can delete the stuff you don't like.
I mean, I can delete everything.
Oh, I thought there was one trend of thought that said that, if you put something out there, you should keep even the bad comments there. So
I guess it helps with engagement. But I think, do I want to wake up every day and see those comments? I'd rather not. The only platform that I'm quite critical of that doesn't really allow you to do that is X or Twitter.
Yeah.
That's the only platform where you can't delete comments.
We can't X.
Yeah, you can't X. But everything else you can, which is why I actually left Twitter. I don't use X anymore.
I know.
Because you can't control
I'm minimizing. I used to love Twitter, but I do not like X. Yeah.
So I think social media has its flaws. I think there's quite a bit of government regulation in the UK, and I would argue we need more. So we have the ASA, which is the Advertising Standard Authority, and they can fine influencers and content creators for depicting false narratives. And so one really big example is, if you are selling a makeup product but you have a filter on, you can actually have a fine. You can receive a fine for doing that.
I like that.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. I think it needs to be pushed a lot more. Hopefully, it will spread. But ASA, the Advertising Standard Authority. But again, the reason why I love social media is because one thing I have seen, especially in the past few years, is no one can tell your story better than yourself, and no one can kind of write your narrative better than yourself. And so I think it's good that people are, especially young people, are really taking control and predicting their own content.
I like that authority you're talking about.
Yep.
Now, do they take action against all these AI generated content as well?
Yeah.
And there's so much of it going around. I mean, guys, I'm sure you've received all these really cute children, pictures of children, chubby. Nobody's child looks like that, Or during Chinese New Year, that dragon with all that vegetables around it. And I tried asking my chefs. No chef can do that either. So they're all, fake. But it's amazing how many people know this, and how many people think that all these are real, and and they crave to have a child that looks like that. No way. So I mean, does this authority that you're talking about, does it have the right to sort of like stem anything that is AI created?
So I would say the ASA are definitely trying. I think what they need is software that can detect what is AI and what is not.
Yeah.
That does exist. I think they just need to become more access into that software. But I hope that what we will have is whenever somebody tweets or when someone posts a picture that they use AI, you should say, this has been created with AI. Because Instagram, very cleverly during the pandemic, you could not write the word COVID on a post without seeing this mentions COVID. So they have software that detects language and fonts. So they need something that will detect AI. In the UK, we are unfortunately seeing the rise of something called self-sorting, which is depicting AI of very graphic images of young people, particularly women. So that's definitely on the radar of the kind of legal sphere. Is really understanding how can we tackle that as well.
Right. Now, speaking of social media, it has been blamed for the negative impacts that it supposedly has on the younger generations, perhaps even the millennials right now. Why millennials, the so-called strawberry generation? It's because of social media, blah blah blah, and hence also influencers. Or what can you do as an influencer to help that situation? And do you believe that social media is the reason for all this depression that's happening and etc.?
Yeah, I think it definitely plays a big role. The past few months, one thing that I've personally been upset with, that I've cried about, I think, which is the images that we're seeing in like Gaza and Israel. And that's one thing that I feel like now we're seeing more because we have social media. So a part of me kind of, maybe back before it existed, we weren't so upset because we never saw it. But then the problem is, well, now we're aware. So I think it comes with, again, pros and cons. We are aware, which is good. We're more educated, we're more informed. But the latter, unfortunate aspect is that it can impact us in terms of mental health. I don't think that social media is ever going to go away. I don't think that it's going to be minimized. I think what we do need is a push for projects that aid people how to use social media. We need more social media policies from platforms, but also we do need a push going away from social media in terms of having social media detox. And that's one thing that I've seen the young generation really push for. The young generations have been brought up with social media. With me, I think I started to see it when I was like 8 or 7. But then literally been born into a world where there's so much information, which is why we are starting to see the young generation become against influencers, which I think is great. Using TikTok, the platform themselves, to be critical of influencers, which again I think is great. But also wanting a more mundane life away from social media because it's all they've seen. It's not new to them and exciting. It's just becoming a bit of a wall. So I think it's great that we're moving away from this kind of this view of needing to constantly be on social media, but I don't think it's going to go anywhere. And AI is really going to increase the outputs.
Okay. Well, on the topic of being an influencer, as mentioned, and you are also a psychology graduate, and you later pursued higher education law. Now, what drew you to these seemingly different fields, and how do you leverage your combined knowledge to create impactful social media content that promotes positive change, raises awareness about discrimination, and, of course, fostering inclusivity?
So it's actually this man over here who's on his phone. He's the one. He's the one that inspired me. I actually met Daniel in 2019.
But he's a social influencer with
Oh,
cats.
100%, yeah, cat influencer. But he inspired me because he has a career in law. He works in the education field. And when I met Daniel, I was really excited about the projects he was working on, as well as Sunway. And I think I've always loved the idea of university culture. So for my undergrad in psychology, I specialize in the psychology of education, trying to understand discrimination and trying to understand motivation of young people today. So why is it that someone like me can be on camera and young people will relate to me? So there's this amazing theory, it's called IBM for short, it stands for identity-based model. It's from a psychologist from Boyzman, and she essentially says that young people can look for traits that they identify with, and through having role model depictions, they can aspire. So I saw psychologically it being a really, really good thing. The problem, however, when it comes to social media, and what I found is that there's a limit on how much change you can impact. It's just through a screen. That's the only impact I have. And I think another type of influencers that probably don't get enough credit are the kind of local people doing really good things for the community. The only difference is they are not on social media. So while those local councillors don't have the reach on social media, they do have a quality. And that's one thing I really aspire to have is quality over quantity. Like, it's great, there's millions of people that watch me, but in terms of having a direct impact, I never really felt that. And my love language is like acts of service. And so I really want to work with young people. That was always the idea. And that's why I wanted to therefore learn more about university, hence my master's in higher education. And then I met our Dato, and I just thought, this is the most glamorous person I've met in my life, who just had a career that I honestly dreamed of. And the fact that she came from the same college that I did in Cambridge, I think that was even more motivation, just wanting a career that was, on the way. And then I realized, in order for me to be a higher education leader, I need to understand the laws that govern higher education. And that's when I started working or applying for Farrell Co. Farrell Co. being one of the leading law firms in education, representing a lot of universities, whether it's employment law, IP law, contract law, property law. And so now I'm in the process of learning and understanding the law behind it, that one day in the future I could become a higher education leader. But psychology, education, law, they really go hand in hand in my opinion. Psychology, you learn about behavior, you learn about the kind of why. In law, you have to learn about the policies and the procedures that can implement that why. And then education is the industry in which you apply those factors in. So I think it's three great, phenomenal disciplines that work so well together.
Excellent. Now, speaking of influencing positive change, let's delve into your work with the Aziz Foundation. One recent example of the foundation's impact was, as Xiao Yu has mentioned, the Ramadan Lights in central London. I know, we always talk about the Christmas lights. Why not the Ramadan Lights? I just love them.
Yeah.
I think it's amazing that you were instrumental in setting this up. Can you share how influencing the foundation and its mission to promote diversity and inclusion?
So a bit of context about the Aziz Foundation. It's a family foundation set up in 2016 by the Aziz family. The chairman is Aziz. And because the family are influenced heavily by their religion, charity and zakat is such a true element of Islam that was his way of trying to give back to the community. So Aziz Foundation primarily tries to help British Muslims with engagement, representation, education, and also entertainment to some extent. And so our main project is scholarships, because we found that a lot of British Muslims were not applying to study masters in universities because of a lack of funding. And so we introduced scholarships for a range of different universities. I always say that probably the proudest achievement I have isn't necessarily the social media career I've had, it's the work with the Aziz Foundation, because in the months that I worked with them and now as an ambassador, I led the creation of scholarships at Oxford and Cambridge. And one thing about our scholarships that I want everyone to remember is, it's not we're just going to give the university money to accept a student.
Right.
We have individual partnerships. So we would say that we're going to upfront a certain percent of the cost, and we want the university to pay the remaining. It's a minority payment, but we want them to pay. We also want them to uphold or create certain policies that try to address supporting British Muslims in the higher education sector. So one popular example is we always try to promote a university adopting a definition of Islamophobia. We're not very strict on what definition you adopt, what policy you adopt. You can even create it yourself, but we do want something there that's, as part of the top-down structure. And my kind of journey with Oxford and Cambridge is, it's very hard to try to convince these traditional universities to believe in a project like this. And my team couldn't do it for years. And the reason why I think I was successful is because of the impact of being an influencer. Because my name was already known. I was very heavily involved at Wolfson College and at Jesus College in trying to implement policy, trying to implement change, so they were aware of who I was. And then, of course, I knew the social media team at Cambridge and Oxford that also worked well with me. So it kind of had to be me. It had to be someone who had their hands in all these different pots to create this amazing kind of idea and initiative. And so we got the email sent and the MOU signed in 2 months for both universities.
Oxford and Cambridge.
Well, Oxford and Cambridge.
That's incredible.
And it's been literally less than a year since we've started it. We've already sent 2 scholars to Wolfson Cambridge. We have another 2 that we're about to send. We've got an Oxford scholar coming in, and we're still doing interviews. The moral of that story is, I went to Cambridge Oxford having a small idea. I wanted to create change. I did it on social media, but I didn't stop there. And while we glamorized social media and influencer, it was the work that I did with a charity that works on the ground that's trying to have change that I think is probably the most effective.
Yeah, and that's exactly what you wanted. Because to be able to influence in real life, to actually touch the people and not be fronted by a screen.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
you managed to do that.
Exactly that. And with the Ramadan Lights context, never in Western Europe has there been a display of aerial Ramadan lights until last year and this year. And I probably, worked very hands-on trying to make it happen. I remember the week it launched being like the busiest week of my life. Initially, I was quite skeptical because I didn't understand how lights are going to create change for Muslims who are, in poverty, are represented. What are lights? Fairy lights. That's what I called them at the time. How are they going to implement change? And I just can't describe the atmosphere when we launched the lights.
Lights of hope.
Yes, that's exactly what it was. It became a beacon. It became lights of hope. I might steal that phrase, actually. But I will never forget, every day I passed work, in the evening, during Ramadan, I would see everyone taking pictures of the lights. Whether it was kids, whether it was adults, whether it was Muslims, non-Muslims. It was such a beautiful thing to see, happy Ramadan. And then this year, when we launched them again, the Aziz Foundation really took over. We designed everything from scratch. We worked with a variety of different partners. And then what we did uniquely this year is we also have Eid lights as well. So after a month of Ramadan, then it's Happy Eid. And it was Eid. And it was just such a beautiful thing to see because it brought so many people from the community together to literally say, I feel like I belong in this country. I, as a British Muslim, have a space and I belong. And now London and the Council of Westminster agree with this. So it was probably one of the most effective and most famous projects we've ever done.
Wow.
Yeah, that's amazing. I honestly would highly recommend just Google Ramadan Lights, and it's just the best images you'll see. And if you ever do come to London next year Ramadan, you'll see them again as well.
You know, guys, this is history in the making. Ramadan Lights in London. And I must say, I didn't think much about it because we always go to London to see the Christmas lights. And it's such a big deal, right? And I know that when I came back to Malaysia, and that we started having lights in Sunway, and I mentioned one day during one of our joint marketing meetings in the Sunway group, that I said one of the best things that we did is having festive lights. And of course, in Sunway, we don't just have Christmas, we have Chinese New Year, we have Eid and Ramadan. And now we have them all year round because they are just so beautiful. So thank you for doing that.
It's amazing. And I think what I love the most is seeing other countries, other Muslims around the world really acknowledging the lights, because we got messages from those in Saudi, from Europe, a lot of people posted about them, and it really became a beacon of global solidarity. And the Aziz Foundation really worked so hard. We would finish work at midnight sometimes, but it was absolutely worth it. Absolutely.
So diversity and inclusion are obviously a major focus for you. Now, can you share your perspective on the current state of diversity and inclusion in the UK itself? Are there areas where you see significant progress versus areas that still need work?
It's always interesting because when I come to Malaysia, it's such a different demographic of culture and ethnicity. So for context, in the UK, around 80%, more than about 80% of our population is white British, and then the remaining percent is people of colour. And you'll go to a city like London where you'll see so much diversity, but then in certain corporate businesses, in terms of schools, when it comes to leadership, you will see again just white majority. So you look outside London, it's super diverse, but we're not getting those people of colour in those decision-making roles. So it's a really weird environment in terms of racial diversity. What I will say, and this is really positive, is I do think that we are seeing a lot of progress being made. I think a big mark was the Black Lives Matter protest after George Floyd's murder. That saw quite a lot of change, and probably I should say investment, financial investment, in wanting to see more equality and diversity work. We have a brown Prime Minister. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I don't know why.
We have for how long though?
Well, the fact that we have one, he's a great role model for a lot of rich brown people at private schools everywhere. But the fact, this is very positive, the fact that we have one, I think is, some form of stepping stone. I think where the UK, especially England, is trying to increase its success is social mobility. And it's something that I've heard so much in the past 3 years. Social mobility in the UK, we're a very class-based society.
Yeah.
If someone says they are working class versus middle class, you can, it's like character differences you can see. And you have a lot of pride in being working class. So you see a lot of push into wanting to help those who come from poor backgrounds. And I do think that we are actually great in that regard. Because, for example, our tuition loan system, it's saying that regardless of where you come from, if you want to go to university but you can't afford it, if you are a British citizen, we can try to help you get there. The problem, however, I think sometimes it gets whitewashed. And I think that we need to remember social mobility is not social equity. The solution is not to take a boy from Hackney, to put him to Oxbridge, for him to make money, and then the world is great, and we need more people like that. Social mobility is about getting working class to middle class. It's about moving from one class to the other, as opposed to narrowing the gap of inequalities between the classes. So while social mobility has been great for the UK, we've actually had an increase of income inequality the past decade.
Right.
So rich people are getting more money and poor people are getting poorer. There's this famous thing we're going through now, which is a cost of living crisis. It's all over the news. I would actually call it, an inequality crisis because, yeah, things are getting more expensive, but for who? And so I think that's why we have to be very, very careful, especially in the UK, because social mobility is becoming this really big thing pushed by a specific government. But what we need is less inequality between the classes. We need to narrow that gap as much as we can, and hopefully our new government and the tax system will hopefully do that. But that's where the UK is really focusing on, is social mobility.
But I think this is a global curse at the moment. It's not just Britain. I mean, we're beginning to see that in Malaysia itself. Now, I just want to go back a little bit to when you went to Cambridge for the first time and you found that you were this minority, and was there any support given to you besides financial support? As in, your tuition fees being paid for, so you didn't really have to worry about that. But any other social support that was offered to you to help you fit in and to help you, acclimatize, socialize, or whatever the word is. I say this because in Sunway we have something known as the Jessica, the community scholarships, and these scholars that we go all out to look for are actually coming from very underprivileged backgrounds. So they could be, they would have been chosen from the homes that they, not the homes as in, their family homes, but these are welfare homes that we're talking about. So they would come to us from welfare homes. And for every child that comes to us, to ensure that this child is socially what's the word, socially
Included, engaged.
yes, engaged, etc. There is actually a whole team of people surrounding this child. We have mentors, and we see here, Minky is one of the mentors, alumni mentors, who has come back, and he was here earlier for a mentorship program. And we also have counselors to ensure that the child does not feel left behind or does not feel like a fish out of water, and help with homework, for example, and understanding what is happening in class. Did you have that kind of support, or do you think that kind of support is needed?
Absolutely, it's needed. Absolutely, I did not have that support, and I would argue that I don't even think it's there still. I think this is why one of the reasons why I love Sunway on Malaysia is I feel like there is this emphasis on community, whereas in the UK we're very individualistic. We are very focused on ourselves and our progression. This did not exist when I was there, but what I did have support in was my social media community. And even the
social media was to support you.
Because when I, at Cambridge, as one of the only minority ethnic people, or even now at my law firm, being one of the only Muslims, when you post about these things online, and it's other people that reach out to you to say, well done, I'm here if you need help, I can be your mentor, for example, that's the help I got. So it wasn't from the university itself, it was externally. And then I think one of the most impactful elements of a university is the student societies. These student societies, these clubs, they can really create a home away from home.
Right.
And that's where I saw a lot of solace and inclusivity from, was, for example, the Pakistani Society or the UK People Society, or even the Nimping Society or something boring like that. You would see people who just want to socialize and engage, but that's not something from a top-down perspective that is happening. And I can say this from the Aziz Foundation perspective. We partner with around 40 plus universities, and that's something that we're really trying to push for, is to have a chaplain or to have some sort of mentorship program that is invested from the university itself. And I don't think we're there yet. And I think that's a lesson that we can probably learn.
Good. Thank you. Now, to wrap up, so that other people can have a piece of you as well. We'd love to hear your final thoughts, obviously. Now, we've discussed the power of using our voices for positive change. Can you share some specific ways each of us regardless of background or platform, can leverage our voices to influence and encourage diversity and inclusivity in our own communities. So, basically all of us here.
So I think the number one thing we can do is listen. And I think that there's enough of emphasis on leaders telling us what to do. I know better because I'm older or more experienced, a very top-down approach. And the most effective is that I feel in my work is when it comes from bottom up. When you listen to the community you're trying to help, specifically young people who have gone through an experience that we can never relate to, understand their thoughts, understand their feelings, and ask them, what would you like help with? I think that's probably the most effective way. I also would say start locally. It's great to have social media, again, for the reach, but it comes back to me being the boy in Hackney where it was my local community that I helped first. Before social media, I was a mentor to the students below me. So it comes from local community work. And then you can take your social media if you want the reach. But there is nothing that can replace mentorship and help from your own community in your own bubble. I think that's the way you have to move forward. And the other thing, going from the top down perspective is to give back. Prof. Arby, Provost,
Yes.
he said something to me literally 5 years ago. I always remember. And he would say things like, I don't want you to pay me back, or I don't want you to help me in any way. I just want you to pay it forward. And he always says that. I just want someone to pay it forward. And I think we don't see enough of that. I'm helping you not for myself or my own selfish needs, not so that I can put on LinkedIn, look at someone I've helped, but because I genuinely care about you. And that compassion for the community, I think in the Western part of the world, in the UK, we don't really have that. I think the new generation is starting to bring that back up because of the fact that it's the community that they feel empowered with. So I think that's probably the message, is to listen, start local, and just work on giving back and mentorship.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that. Now, ladies and gentlemen, your turn. Would you like to, have some questions, Victor?
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Liz, for that incredibly inspirational session. The question that I have is related to what you said about, an identity-based model earlier. So then, I'm wondering, but in your journey throughout YouTube and also in learning how to influence others right there, did you ever reflect upon what specific parts, I guess, of your journey resonated most in your audience, and why do you think that those things eventually resonated with your audience? And in turn, because you spoke about motivation as well, so then how do you suppose that if you were to think about the causal impact upon people watching and millions of people, what do you suppose your influence has been? Thank you for the question. So to answer the first element, what parts of my identity do people probably relate to? So to give you some statistics about my following, 65 to 70% are women, so are young women in particular. So it isn't necessarily about being a man that people like men can identify with me. So it's not my gender. It's most likely, from what I've heard, it's the story of literally growing up poor. And I think it's something that the UK, again, because we're so strong on our class identity, that's probably the number one thing that people can relate to, is growing up poor and growing up in a dysfunctional family. There's not a lot of role models or success stories that come from a broken family, because it impacts you forever, like literally forever. So you're more likely to, unfortunately, not succeed. And so I think that's probably the main element. And I think the reason, again, about why it's been effective is because I come from that broken family, I don't really care about what my family think of me. So I don't mind going on social media and posting anything and thinking, oh, what is my family going to think? Or, like, I literally don't care. And I think that's what makes it so good and makes it authentic. And people can see someone who is relatable, but authentic. So I think that element is the broken family part. And in terms of what has the motivation done, I think the answer is they've applied to university. And that's probably the key takeaway because I hear that literally every single day. There's always someone in a DM, and people don't see my DMs, that's private, but there's always, because of you, I've applied to this university, or I thought I can do this. And I think for me, the best feedback I get on is face to face. And someone recognizes me or I'm at university and they say, because of you, I've now applied. My journey then afterwards was, okay, so now that I've got you there, then what happens? How do we look after you once you're at university? And so that's where a lot of the kind of scholarships and the Aziz Foundation kick in, because it's great that you can want to apply to Oxford, but who's going to fund it? So I think that it doesn't answer your question. I think that was.
Hello, hi. My name is Ira. Today I brought my two children, Irshad and Sophia, to meet you. I'm a big fan of your vlog. I've been following you for the last 2 years. And we drove all the way from Sunway. It's 1.5 hour drive.
Wow.
We picked up our kids. Irshad just finished his science competition today. We picked him up from his school. Sophia was so hungry because she did her sports activity today from school. We picked her up from school and drove them all the way here to meet you because you have inspired me so much as a parent. So I actually have so many questions, but I'll narrow it down to just 2 questions today. Number one, I can totally relate to your background and your story, and that's why I've been following your channel. We came from a very poor family, underprivileged family. I came from the poorest state in Malaysia, Kelantan. I was fortunate though because my dad, who was a teacher teaching the deaf students, won a scholarship to the UK. So we've never spoken English, we've never gotten out of our village, and we suddenly found ourselves in the UK in Birmingham.
Wow.
And that changed our lives completely because of the scholarship. So as a teenager growing up, I was opened up to so many opportunities and quality education. In the UK, I finished my GCSE. I won the Best Student Award. When I first got to the UK, I couldn't even speak a word of English. But with a lot of support from my teachers, I got A star for my drama. I did theatre studies for my A level as well. So I was inspired to work so hard because of my background. Being so poor, we had to live with our grandmother because my parents couldn't support us. There were the 5 of us. And Alhamdulillah, I did not go to Cambridge or Oxford, but I ended up in a university in Malaysia where I was surrounded by privileged kids whose, like the words like Cambridge, Oxford are very normalized in their conversations. So that was the first time I was hearing about Oxford and Cambridge. But even though, despite my grades, I did not actually apply to further my studies in postgrad in Oxbridge. But I started talking about Oxford and Cambridge with my siblings. And the two of them ended up in Oxford for her PhD, my sister, and Cambridge for her master's, my other sister. So we are always inspired to spread the awareness of how education can really elevate their socio-economic status because that's what happened to us. And it started with one scholarship that my dad got. Okay, now we are no longer poor. We are doing quite okay. So as a parent, how can I inspire my children and other people's children to work hard and to really see that the opportunities out there are big? You can go to Oxford, you can go to Cambridge, you can go to LSE, you can go to Sunway if you want to. But firstly, you cannot limit your mindset thinking that, oh, this is not for me. I mean, Sophia and Irshad, they're 10 years old and they're 14 years old. But the dream has to start now because the work start now. Because we were driven by poverty. But for other children who are not from a similar background, how can we inspire them? Thank you.
I think that's a question. Thank you. And thank you for coming. Yeah. Amazing. I think that's a question for both of us. Because from a parent's perspective and also from that's kind of the child of someone's perspective. So I think you have to understand that education really can save lives. It can change the world. It can change you. And in the UK, it's one of the biggest common denominators when it comes to income. So essentially, what I'm saying is, from a financial perspective, if you want to be supported, if you want to look after your parents, if you want to look after others, getting an education is one of the best ways to do that because then it can land you a good job. In terms of inspiring children, what I've learned is the ages of 14, that's important, but it's kind of the 15, 16, 17 period that's probably the most important because that's when we have to start thinking about these big decisions of what careers do I want. And when I think of the change that I made and my own upbringing, it was at 17 years old that I had to really sit down and think, okay, what do I want to do and how can I get there? But I think one of the best things you can do is the network that you've established through your success, the network that your siblings have established through their success, as long as they are there and they're accessible to your children, they know that no matter where in life or what time in their life, they can access help through you and through that network. I think is probably one of the most influential things I could say. But I also want to hear your opinion on this also.
In fact, the very question that you asked, Ira, was something that I was faced with when I was a trainee teacher in London, and I was faced with these kids who clearly preferred to do something else rather than to be in class. And there was one particular girl that I picked up, and I said, "Look, you really got to do your work because you're gonna fail." If you don't, and this is a crucial time, you're going to be coming up to O levels. And you know what she said to me? But what's the point? My sister passed. My sister went to university and she's jobless. And she's on the dole. At that point, I was just a trainee teacher and I had to grapple with the answers myself. And then having come from not the same background, having come from a slightly more privileged background, and to have to relate to where she was coming from was so humbling. And that itself, for me, was a learning journey because it made me go back and try to understand more the students that I was faced with, This is a London school, and the kids would come from all kinds of backgrounds, and they did not come from a privileged, a privileged family, and so what I did was, yes, I went backwards. I began to become extremely interested in my students. And I remember this one boy. He was such a naughty boy. I still remember his name. His name is Neil. And Neil was what we Malaysians will call a chachi, what is that? A very itchy worm. He's always squirming everywhere. What do you call that? Chaching. Huh? Chaching what? Touching Gila or something like that. I don't know what it is, touching Gila or something like that. So, typical boy like that. And I would come into the class and say, "Neil, come to the front." He said, "Oh, miss, I haven't even started yet, you know." And he would hide in the cupboard, etc., just to avoid me. And so one day I decided to go visit Neil to try to understand more how to reach out to this boy that I was really very fond of. And I looked up his details, and he lived in a particular place, and the father, and actually he lived on top of his father's pub. The family owned the pub, and so when I went there, I was shocked to find a pub. So I went in, bought myself a drink, and there I saw Neil. Neil was working at night in his father's pub. And then it dawned on me, poor Neil has no time to do any work because after school he had to go back and he had to help his father in his business. So then I sat down with the father. The next opportunity we had, which was we had these parents sessions, and the parents actually come. And Neil, who would come in with hairstyle like what we call the Beatles, that means everything covering and all that, you know. And when Parents' Day came, I nearly missed Neil because he had his hair all brushed and bright cream and everything and looking totally different. And he sat there next to his father like that. And I realized that the father is quite a force of nature. And he was dead scared of me. And he was wondering what I'll tell the father. And so I told the father, I said, you know, Neil has a lot of potential, but Neil really needs time. And I could see that the father was very interested in the son's progress. And that's why he came. And I said, you really need to give him time and support him a lot more in his work. I don't know what happened to Neil today. I hope that he's doing as well as possible because I'm really very fond of Neil. So actually, the answer would really be to care. To really care. And to let them know that you care. Because if you don't, it will be Neil and his father. Do we have another question?
Hello, really good evening to see you. So, my name is Aiden. I'm actually a global student here on campus. So, I have a viewer of your YouTube channel, and a lot of your global content has been quite relatable for my case, and seeing your journey across the years, especially and your message to during your team's video, I found it very uplifting for my situation. So here, given that most of your content is for, like, I guess, A-level students in the UK as well, and I'm here a student in Malaysia, was there ever a meaningful moment that you've had with a viewer from outside of the UK that has really been impacted by your videos? Did you have a really meaningful moment with them?
So I think it just happened like 2 minutes ago. Probably that was an extremely meaningful experience. But yeah, I would say that I get the opportunity to travel abroad, and I do get to speak at schools, and I spent at a school called GIS,
International School.
in like I think in 2019. And I think I always relate to the kid like the feminine boy who would get bullied in school, who kind of comes up to me and is like really shy and just says like, by the way, like your content actually like helps me get through the day. I think that's probably where my heart is at the most. It's when I see myself in my viewers. And I always say that one of the reasons why my content is impactful is because I am my viewer. Like I'm not pretending to be this underprivileged person who is at Oxford and Cambridge. Like I have struggled, I've documented it, and my followers can relate to it. So I think that's probably the best experiences when I go abroad, and I see kids that I see myself in, say that the videos help them. And you think my content would be for those who are studying their A levels, but they've grown as I have grown. So I've made content for like 5 years now. So now what I see that the majority of my followers in these type of statistics have grown in age. And now it's 21 plus because they've done their A levels, they've gone to university, and now they're graduates working. So it's a goal all the time, which is pretty cool. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. And I think the situation sharing just now, definitely was something that also really answered my question.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. Do we have any other questions? We've got one.
Hi, my name is Chok Hong Bun. I'm a book publisher. I'm always wondering whether when because you are an influencer, and you influence people through social media, through the media, and I'm always wondering whether the power of the written word is more impactful than the social media influence. Is that something you feel that if you write it and it's in a book, will your influence be more impactful than what we are doing now?
Really cool question. I'm thinking about that. I would say that I kind of hate to say this, but I think for my community, I think social media works because when you think about the underserved community in the UK, their reading levels aren't even that great. And I don't think that they go to books for sources of inspiration. I think that's more of an older generational aspect. And we've seen influencers start to write books, and that's been highly successful. So I think that it is changing. My audience probably would prefer the personality that shines through a camera, the visual aspect of it, the auditory aspect. I think that works because it impacts us in all senses. But I do see that there is a lot of success in the written text. I also acknowledge that a lot of my followers sometimes have like neurodiverse issues. I've noticed that as well. Some of them just don't want to read for whatever reason, lack of attention span. So I think that's where social media can help. However, I have started to realize now that I'm getting older the power of like written words, because I think when you're creating a video, you don't necessarily think always about the words. You think more about the kind of message and how it looks. So I have realized as I'm looking older, the power of storytelling and the power of words in itself can be more impactful. And I think it's something that I want to do, as I progress in my career. And as I've gotten older, I have read a lot more. So I think there is a lot of power in that. I also think voices that can't go on social media. A lot of the reading that I've done in the past few months have been around what's happening in Gaza and Israel. A lot of the stories I've been reading have come from like voices from occupation, and that's something that you can't get from social media, or you can't really get in the same way through established media because of certain bias. So I think it's a great way of storytelling and getting your voice out, and I'm hoping that in the future that's what's going to be the norm.
Okay. Well, ladies and gentlemen, if there are no further questions, then please join me to thank Ibz for a very insightful evening. Thank you very much for speaking to all of us.
Thank you so much. Daniel, are we doing a green photo?
Yeah,
On social media.
yeah. There you go.
Thank you so much, Ibz Mo and Dr. Elizabeth Lee. That was indeed an engaging discussion. I would like to kindly ask you to remain on stage as we would like to present a token of appreciation to our speaker today.
Okay.